Hello and welcome to the Lewis Nicol Show. I'm excited to bring on our next guest today, who's joining us for an interview. You'll see him next week on the second Waterloo Road reunion with the Scotland cast. But it's the brilliant Richard Mylan. How are you?
I'm very well, mate. How are you doing?
Really good, thanks. How are you finding lockdown? Are you kind of keeping busy, doing the same as everybody else, like painting walls, doing the garden?
I haven't been painting walls. I've been doing no gardening. I've been doing a lot of ordering on Deliveroo, a lot of sitting around in my PJs. But I have been keeping myself busy creatively. I wrote a play in lockdown, which was really kind of cathartic for many reasons. You know, it kept me busy, it kept me creative, but also it was kind of semi-autobiographical. So it was nice to kind of delve in and live my life, part of my life anyway, through the characters that I created. So that was fun. And I'm looking forward to shooting a film in Swansea in April, which is kind of like right on the cusp of lockdown, sort of not ending, but becoming less restrictive in South Wales where I live. So I've got that to look forward to as well.
God, you have been keeping busy. I didn't expect you to say that you've written a play, which is pretty impressive. Was that something you're looking to tour? Like, how does that work with writing a play?
Well, look, I'd never written a play before. And I think a lot of creative people, when we were kind of starved of what we love to do, we needed to do something. Otherwise, you know, we'd go a little bit mad. So yeah. It was my first attempt. But because it was a world that I knew, it kind of just flew out of me in about 3 weeks. So it was really quick. And I'm hoping to premiere that in South Wales. I sent it to a very good writer friend of mine who's quite respected here in Wales, and he loved it. So that's a really good gauge. And then he's kind of, with his backing, it's gone out to the right kind of theatre people here in South Wales and London as well. And, you know, we shall see. But it's kind of at that nerve-wracking stage where it's in other people's hands and you have no control over that, you know?
So have you always been creative? When you look back at, you know, you as a child, were you always kind of creative, ambitious, and into kind of performing arts?
I wouldn't say I was ambitious, but I was definitely creative, but it was stumbled across because I'm dyslexic and I was rubbish in school, right? So it's kind of funny that I played the deputy headmaster of a school. I was terrible in school. But my sister, I can't believe I'm going to tell this story, but my sister wanted, because I grew up in like the mid to late 70s. Yeah, I was born in 1972. And disco was like a really big thing back then. And my sister wanted to go to disco dancing classes. So I went along with her. And I loved it more than she did. And I took to it like a duck to water. And it was kind of a bit surprising for my mum because, you know, I'd not really shown any kind of talent in that area. And all of a sudden we stumbled across something that I was really good at. And because I was so poor in school and I didn't really enjoy the academic aspect of school, I really latched onto that. And then it kind of developed into more kind of forms of dance and then an interest in drama. And then, you know, I went to dance school when I was 12. So, you know, really early, I left Swansea for London when I was 12. And then straight out of college then I went from 12 to like 18, 19, I was there in London. And then I went straight into the West End. So it was kind of like, as soon as I knew it was something that I loved, I never let go of it, you know, and it was just a whirlwind from there.
I'm just more baffled that you said that you're born in 1972 and I'm doing the maths. You've done really well because I'm 27 and there's not much difference in how we look. So you've done well with the age gene, that's for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm. What am I? 48. I'm getting to that age where you actually forget how old you are. So I'm 48, 49 in November, but inside I definitely feel it. So like I'm on a mission to get like the fittest I've ever been in my life before I'm 50. And my brother, who's a personal trainer, he's going to help me with that. I haven't started it yet because, like I said, I'm still ordering Deliveroo's and sitting around in my PJs. But it's on the cards.
You know, in regards to being an actor, for you, when you look back at your career so far, when would you say the big break came? The moment where you sat back and thought, do you know what, this is really happening for me now?
There was a couple. The first one was getting a job in a musical in the West End. That was like a dream come true. And then 2 years later, I auditioned to understudy one of the lead roles, but I ended up getting the lead role rather than the understudy. So that was the next kind of dream come true. And then when I finished in the West End, I was in a band for a while. And we were like a funk band, and we played like Ronnie Scott's and places like that. And we were good, but we were never going to be great. So I needed to do something else. And I just sort of stumbled into acting really through friends that were doing creative projects, and they wanted me to sort of read parts or get involved. And I'd done a couple of little sort of TV appearances while I was in the West End on things like The Bill, and I really loved it. So I knew it was something that I was really interested in. And then through one of these readings that I did for a friend, there was a really good agent there, because I didn't have an agent. So I got to this point without an agent. And then I went with that agency, and that's where my television career sort of took off. So there's quite a few little moments in my life. I wouldn't say there was a definitive moment, but it's like, you know, a series of events.
Yeah, I always remember, because I'm a big fan of the show Bad Girls, and we're actually reuniting the cast as part of a big special. But you were actually in that, if I remember correctly. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know if it was with Vicky Bush. I'm not sure if you played a love interest.
yeah,
With,
that's right. Yeah, and then we were reunited on Waterloo Road.
What was that like?
Yeah, I love doing Bad Girls. Sorry?
I was say the show was such, when you joined, it was a huge one of the most popular shows on ITV. So what was it like when you got that kind of gig to join the show?
Oh, that was massive, because like you said, it was a really big show, and I never remember. I never really remember sort of jobs in terms of like walking onto set and things like that. But that job particularly is like stuck in my mind, because they filmed it in 3 Mills. And they had this kind of massive prison wing set, and it was life size, and it was the most incredible thing I'd ever seen. But yeah, I played. I think he was like a service man. But,
yeah,
and he ended up servicing a bit more than he should.
It was a great part of it. I mean, obviously, many people watching this can't wait to hear about Waterloo Road. But another show, I'm not, forgive me if I'm wrong, but Where the Heart Is, weren't you in that? Because I loved that show. It was one of those, when I grew up, you watched it every Sunday night with your family. It was normally on after one of the reality shows. It was great. I mean, looking back at that, what were your memories of Where the Heart Is?
I love that. That's one of my favorite ever jobs. Because, you know, I think I did that for 3 years, and I sort of lived up in Yorkshire, where they filmed I can't remember the name of it now, Last of the Summer Wine, and it's such a beautiful place to be, but I really loved that show. I think I learned a lot on that job, you know, about television and about television acting. Even though I'd done quite a lot up until that point, that's the job where I felt like I really cut my teeth, because, you know, we did it for a while, and I got to work with people like Denise Van Outen and Andy Paul and a Welsh friend of mine, Julian Lewis-Jones, and it was such a laugh. Yeah, I loved it. But you're right. It was like I think it was kind of like the last of the cozy family Sunday night dramas, wasn't it?
I love that. Obviously, Waterloo Road is you've probably seen from Twitter and the reunions we're doing, it still has this kind of huge cult following. It's loved, and you played such a big part of the show, because when it moved to Scotland, it was a massive risk. You know, it was a popular show and it was moving completely. It changed dynamic. But your character was one of those that lives on in the legacy of the Scotland series, in my opinion, with Simon Lowsley. And he was at first this kind of brash, a little bit obnoxious, rubbed people up the wrong way unintentionally because he was just ambitious, but actually a really nice guy who cared about the pupils, that wanted the best. So what was it like to get that role? Because Waterloo Road was huge when you joined, but it was also a different show in the sense that it moved, completely different dynamic.
Yeah. I've been saying life changing a lot, but doing Waterloo Road was genuinely life changing because that's where I met my now wife, and it's our 5th wedding anniversary in March, at the end of March. It's got such a big piece of my heart, that show, and you know, you're right about the cult following, but what's amazing is that there's this new following now that have found it through lockdown, this kind of new generation of Waterloo Road fans, and I just think that's amazing. But it was a gift of a part. I remember when I got the sides through, the pages through to audition, I was like, oh man, I really want this, because I felt like I got the character, and I just loved the show as well. And luckily I got it, and I'll never forget, I was with my son in the park pushing him on a swing when the call came through that I got the job, and I was like, I think I nearly pushed him up and over the bars with excitement. But it was like, you know, I'm going to Scotland. I'd never worked in Scotland before, and like you said, you know, it made that massive move. But I was really nervous as well, because I knew that I was effectively replacing such a massive character that Jason Doan played, Tom Clarkson. So I was like, they're really, really big shoes to fill. And I think that the writers, they wrote him really well, Simon Lowsley, because he did rub people up the wrong way, and they were like, he's nothing like Tom Clarkson. He's, you know, and people, he made a lot of people sort of angry, fans, and sort of written in with the cast members as well, with the characters. But then slowly over time, you got to see the real Simon Lowsley, and you're right, he did genuinely care about the school and about the students. And then I think that's why he came, you know, the fans kind of warmed to him, because they realized that he was a genuine guy with genuine intentions.
Well, he was like a walking advert for skinny fit suits, because he loved a skinny fit shirt. And so you see some scenes where he's walking and you're thinking, wow, that shirt can't get any tighter.
Oh man, you are so right. He loved a suit, but I love that about him, because I quite like suits as well. And like, he wore like proper designer suits, and I've still got a couple of them in my wardrobe. Yeah, I love that about him. He was really meticulous about the way he looked, and you know, he was obsessed with his hair and things, and he's a lot of fun to play. He really was.
I mean, in your earlier episodes, of course, you came into a huge storyline. You mentioned Tom Clarkson. He was kind of the heart of the show, and you were brought in to do a scene with George Sampson, Jason Doan. You know, it was his death, and you were a massive part in that. You let this pupil back into the school, kind of thought you knew best in that sense. And, you know, it was a huge moment, because we were losing one of the characters that we've watched for so many years. So I guess for you as an actor to come in and your first scene is with two biggest characters from the show, that must be daunting at times as well.
It was really daunting. They were both lovely, absolutely lovely. Jason and George, they were lovely to me, and they were very welcoming, and so was everybody there. But I'll never forget that night that we shot that scene on the roof, effectively Tom Clarkson's kind of end. There was this really weird kind of atmosphere amongst the crew and people that had known him for years. It was like the end of an era, and it was almost kind of like, it wasn't sad, it was just kind of respectfully. It wasn't like a normal film set, if you know what I mean. This kind of bubbly hub of creativity. It was like a respectful mark of an end of a character, and I'll never forget it. And I was just I was witness to that, and I kept very quiet in between takes, and I was watching Jason kind of do his thing, and he's brilliant. and just taking it all in and just thinking, wow, this really is the end of an era. And like I say, it was just a kind of, it was very poignant that day in work, you know, and I'll never forget it.
So I always remember Simon Lowsley's James Bond moment where he ran and dived into this lake to save a pupil from drowning. I mean, that was a proper 007 moment. You must have enjoyed filming. Well, I imagine it was freezing as well, jumping into this lake too.
It was freezing, but it was a really nice day, and like I had like a sort of dry wetsuit thing underneath my suit, so you know I was even more kind of constricted in it than usual. But I did the whole thing. We didn't use any stunt doubles or anything, and we rehearsed in a pool, and I had to learn to dive like super shallow, so I couldn't dive in and sort of plunge down and come up. I had to dive shallow because where I actually dove,
Yeah, dove. I'd say that.
Yeah. There were kind of like, there was this kind of rocky bit underneath, and there was no other place to shoot it. So I had to learn to dive across the water. So there was a lot of things to think about. And I think I must have done it about 20 times on different angles. But the kind of overriding memory that day is because it was such a technical thing to do, the setup of it took forever, so there was a lot of downtime, and I just remember me and Laurie Brett had the best day in work ever. Like, I've never laughed so much in work. I don't know why it happened that day, but it was something about where we were. It was beautiful countryside. It was a pretty chilled vibe on the set, and we laughed so hard. I mean, we were like a pair of school kids, you know. And me and Laurie always kind of talk about that day, like, you know, yeah. That was such a great day.
I always loved Simon and George Windsor at Angus Deaton because it was just, they were chalk and cheese. You had this young, dynamic, fresh, he always had great ideas, wanted to drive the school forward. Then you had George Windsor that was just, didn't want to do anything. He'd rather read a newspaper, and he had such a grumpy outlook on life. And you had some great comedy moments between you both. Did you enjoy that side in the sense of showing your funny side and getting to have fun with a character?
Loved it. Loved all my scenes with him. He's a great guy, and we became, you know, good friends, and I just always look forward to those because he played that part so well. He absolutely nailed it. Yeah. And actually he was kind of like my favorite character to watch. So yeah, I had great fun working with him, as I did with everyone, but like, yeah, I particularly remember those days as well. Like, him and Laurie were like sort of like my favorite, because we kind of developed this, because we did so many scenes together, we developed this kind of, like you say, a bit more kind of comedy aspect to it all, and without being sort of farcical, if you know what I mean, even though Simon Lowsley did get into really some real farcical moments sometimes. Yeah, I loved working with Angus. Top bloke.
Well, you know, I don't want to talk too much about, because obviously you're going to join us for the reunion, and we're going to talk loads about your storylines with the cast. But one thing I wanted to ask, was it your decision to leave the show? Because, you know, when I look back at the Scotland series, especially in regards to teaching staff, you are one of the most legendary characters of the entire show. So it was a big loss when you did leave. So was that your decision?
Well, firstly, I didn't know I was like a legendary character, so that's really nice that you're saying that. No, in a word, it was not my decision to leave, and I was gutted when I found out I was leaving. But at the same time, I was pragmatic. I was realistic about it. You know, characters, they do come and go, and it was a bombshell end to that season. And after I got over the kind of disappointment and the sadness really of leaving, because if you remember, I kind of like, I'd met my future wife, and, you know, it was just I was having a great time up there, work-wise and personally. And once I got over the sadness of that, I realized that actually he'd probably run his course, Simon Lowsley, because he'd kind of come full circle, you know, and there wasn't really anywhere to go. So what would he then just be, you know, what was the future for him, really? I could see that it would have been difficult to continue and bring in sort of new heads and new deputy heads. And of course, I wasn't as established as characters that, you know, Laurie Brett played.
Yeah.
So I understood it in the end, but I was really sad about it, and I kept that really quiet. That's the first time I've ever said that.
Well, you look at it, the show didn't last that much longer when when you did leave, so that kind of says everything, really. So I would always look back at that and kind of, you know, maybe it was because of you leaving.
Well, that's nice, nice of you. Usually, they call me the kiss of death. Like I join and then things just plummet. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like I was just really glad to be a part of it, you know. And like I say, I met my wife there, and we've got a beautiful baby boy who's now 7 months. He was yesterday or the day before.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So and life is good. So it gave me more than just a job, you know.
Yeah, got your amazing family. Well, thank you so much for taking part in a solo interview, and we're really excited to see you reunite with your wife on the show, of course, and then some of the pupils that you helped inspire as well. Dynasty Barry, I know, is taking part. So thank you so much for taking part today.
Oh, you're so welcome, and I can't wait for that. I'm really looking forward to seeing them all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.